What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with NIO, Tesla, SPY, the QQQ, and a couple of tickers out there. I'm going to break down why the market ended up sinking the way it did, how this ended up affecting NIO, and why NIO is starting to show some strength as we're trying to base at a higher level than expected. But the question is, how will NIO move going forward? Will NIO continue to try to hold this level, or will the market end up affecting it in a different manner? I'm going to break down all this information about these stocks, but let me first say a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks with a $50 cash reward. The offer ends in just about 2 weeks, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so looking at NIO, this thing was up about 0.88% for the day as of right now. And looking at the chart, NIO has been holding up quite decently. That is relative to the market, as the market's continuing to sink down. And that's after all the news that came out from the Fed raising rates even more. And there could even be more news coming out later on today, if not by tomorrow, that could affect the markets as well. But looking at NIO actually hit support right over here, trying to base at about 11.47 around that area, trying to hold up. And we saw NIO get a small bounce before coming back down. It does have this unfilled gap down here, so there's a chance it could drop just a little bit before getting an attempt for a bounce. But it's been quite oversold, dropping very, very hard for the last couple of days. And now NIO is trying to show some strength, is trying to base, and it's forming kind of like an inverse head and shoulders like structure. I can't promise you if it's going to hold or not, because we could drop a little bit more to form this like right shoulder before this thing tries to bounce, but it is showing some strength and more strength than before. Now, let's first talk about the market. Why is the market sinking the way it has been? Obviously, we had the Fed come out and talk about during the FOMC minutes that they could be raising rates even more. And they also announced that because of the current cycle in employment data, they may have to continue to remain hawkish. In doing so, and because of the risk of higher inflation again, that is playing a role in why the market is selling off. There could be another reason as well that we're going to find out later. But I just want to mention that the overall sentiment in the market, the emotion driving the market used to be greed. Now it's just neutral. Now it's becoming fear. The market's becoming more fearful. Looking at the overall momentum, less greedy than before. Looking at the price strength, it's also becoming less greedy, less strong. We're starting to look at the McCullen Volume Summation Index, which is looking weaker as well. So look at the put and call options positioning right now. We can see that fear is driving the market as the put and to call ratios are going up, and the market is positioning for more downside, becoming more and more fearful. The overall VIX is also extremely fearful right now, as the VIX is holding up quite nicely. Looking at some data, let me just reload this so that this is like up to date. But looking at the CME group data, we're starting to see a slight increase in the probability of us getting a 25 basis point rate hike, but it's nothing too crazy just yet. It's only at about 11.5%. So we're going to be watching this to see if this starts going up even more. If that's the case, this could be a little bit more negative for the markets. As far as NIO goes, NIO's saying that they won't launch in the UK until it develops its battery swap infrastructure. Nothing too big over here because NIO is still open to expanding in Europe, but they do have to improve a lot of different things over there, such as their infrastructure there, their battery swapping technology. That's how you're going to incentivize more people to come, because they need that infrastructure. They need those stations. They need things like that. Now, looking at something else, NIO also announced that in Stockholm, they launched their 6th power swap station. This is once again some very, very good news for them. It's the first in Europe with the 3rd generation NIO power swap station, or that power right over there, which is great news for them. Very, very proud of NIO. They're an amazing company continuing to improve. We're going to continue to watch them moving forward. Deutsche Bank also gave NIO a buy rating, so that's going to be very important to note. And looking at the price-price ratio, it's continuing to sink as NIO is losing some relative strength. And looking at this from a daily basis, NIO tends to be green about 53% of the time on Fridays. They tend to be better days than Thursdays typically. So this could be a good sign for tomorrow. And finally, looking at the short interest, we did see a slight increase. We saw about 14.5 million NIO shares shorted. The shorts are starting to decrease just a tiny bit, but it's nothing too crazy in my opinion. Look at the volume. We got about 73 million in volume, so NIO is starting to get more and more buying pressure. But my only concern for NIO is going to be how the whole market performs, because when you look at SPY, it's looking weaker than before, even weaker than what I was expecting initially. We were expecting the market to try to hold up when starting off. We didn't expect it to sell off like this hard, right? We were talking about potentially levels like 440 being tested, if not 438. We went all the way down to like the 435s. That's pretty crazy, a little bit lower than what we were expecting for just one day. And now that this happened, we're going to be looking for either a bounce back to resistance very close to like 437 or so, and maybe a rejection of that. Or, if the market fails to hold these levels and it starts sinking again, if we get some kind of like rebound in the morning, then we end up just continuing to fail and we break below 435. You're going to be watching 434.8. If that fails on spot, it's going to come all the way down to the next support down here at 431. That's going to be coming next if we continue to sink like this and the market's continuing to look weak. As the market weakens, I actually have the 4-hour time frame right here. I'm going to I can just keep some of these trend lines here so you can just see the levels. But I just want to be blunt with everyone. The market's looking weak now. It's not holding up nicely, and we might see some more downside. We could see a pop, then more downside if we fail to hold. And we're going to be watching 434.8-ish, that area about there. If that breaks, I mean, I'm going to see this thing sinking pretty darn hard to this imbalance. 431.5 is coming if that does end up breaking. Could happen as soon as tomorrow as the market's looking weak. Now, for the QQQ, same thing is going on. Looking relatively weak, hitting support at 357, forming this like very, very interesting formation. We didn't really get much of a bounce for Friday so far, but we're going to be watching to see if it continues to sink. So we're going to be watching this 357 area. If it tries to get a bounce or not, we actually have some buyers that stepped in here previously. We have a strong support here, so we're going to be watching for a potential rebound. And we're going to see if this holds. If it ends up breaking because of Aapl sinking, as Aapl is looking weaker, this thing has the potential to fill this gap all the way down into like the mid 355s. 354 is a real possibility if we continue to sink lower. So that's going to be very important and worth noting. The market is still looking relatively weak. Now, if we look at Tesla, Tesla is going to be another very, very interesting stock to look at. Looking at the current trend, I just wanted to mention that we're currently very close to our 200, not our 200, sorry, our support right here. This is going to be our 215 to 215 to 217 support. Sorry about that, guys. That's where Tesla support is right now. If that breaks, we're going to be watching Tesla come all the way down to these next levels. So we have this previous zone right here. I see a zone of support on Tesla. There's going to be some support right here around this 211 area. So we have 3 levels basically. So we're going to be watching for, let me just bring out a horizontal line. This level right here is what Tesla's trying to hold. If that breaks, right, we have 215. If 215 fails, we have this 212 area coming next. Below that, we have 208 to 209, like this entire zone right here. These are going to be the next support zones for Tesla. I would say between 207 and 209 is next, then we have 205 below that. So it is looking weaker, and we do have some more like lower levels to be watching for. We also have this 205 area, so like way down here. And then if it gets below 205, we're probably going to see this thing get very close to 200. The market is, excuse me, the market is continuing to look weaker, not looking too good for Tesla. I'm going to be looking for a bounce off support between 215 to 217. So maybe it kind of like hits this level during the pre-market, tries to rebound. Could retest 220 before rejecting. If it does end up rejecting, watch this thing potentially fall all the way down to these lower levels. 212 could be next. 207 to 205 are all potential targets coming next if it continues to sell off the way it has been. I think it's going to be very important to watch. And one thing I want to notice is that 207 flats is not an exact level. It's actually going to be more of like a range. So I could actually, like redraw this. It's going to be like actually like right here. It's like 207 to 209 actually. So it doesn't really matter. This is like basically the same level. So we're going to be watching this entire zone very, very carefully and see how this thing ends up reacting. And then after that, you're going to be watching support right here. We're going to be watching this 215 area. That's going to be our next level. So this is going to be very important, 215. If that breaks, 212, then we have this next zone around this 207 to 209 area. Then we have 205 below that. So those are some levels to look out for on Tesla. It is looking relatively weak, so look for a possible bounce, and we're going to see if it could try to get back above 220. If it fails to do so, or if it gets like a back test and a fail, the next most likely level is going to be 215. Below that, we have 212, and then 209 to 207 is coming. 205 below that. there's likely more downside. So with all that happening, right, with all these potential downside targets, how could this affect NIO? We might see NIO actually get dragged down just a little bit, but it's not going to be too extreme in my opinion because NIO has this unfilled gap. Let me just pull up the 30 minutes time frame. So it's a little bit easier to see. So on the 30-minute time frame, this is what NIO is looking like. NIO has this unfilled gap way down here. So we're going to be watching this very, very carefully. How does NIO respond to this? If I actually go back on the chart, I think I went to the 1 minute. I'm sorry about that. I think I went to the wrong time frame. We're supposed to go to the 30 minutes. There we go. So on the 30-minute time frame, okay, we have this gap down here all the way down to about 11.3. We could see NIO come back to this imbalance from like 11.16 if that breaks. So watch 11.3 as support. If that breaks, you're going to be watching for 11.16 or so for tomorrow. We could see a little bit of downside and a bounce, but I think it's trying to base around here. You could see some signs of strength for NIO. So watch these levels carefully. I think in the like 11.3 area, then even like lower levels like that, like 11.2 are all possible. So watch to see if it bases or not. And after that happens, we're going to be watching to see if we could get some sort of bounce. But I don't think NIO is going to like crash or sink insanely low unless we get a bad piece of news. I think the odds favor it dropping just a little bit to fill this gap, then trying to base and like the not so low, like 11s, like 11.2, 11.3, trying to base around here, kind of like bounce and then trade sideways, maybe get a very flat close. I think NIO is going to try to hold up a lot better next week, but for now, for Friday, it may be a little weak to end the week before we see anything better next week. So that's what I'm leaning towards. So with that said, guys, I just want to thank you all for listening. Hopefully this video was helpful. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and I'll see you guys in the next one. NIO to the moon as the long term is still incredibly bright, and peace out.